A couple of weeks ago, I had to go to the MVA to update my driver's license. Actually, I should explain that before I go any further. See, in most places in the United States, the place I went to is called the Department of Motor Vehicles, or the DMV. My state, Maryland, is one of the states that decided to get cute and call it something else. Here, it's the Motor Vehicle Administration, or the MVA. But just so you know, when I refer to the MVA, I'm talking about the DMV, or the BMV, or the MVD, or the RMV, or the DVLA, or whatever the hell they call it where you live. The place you have to go to sort out your vehicle registration and driver's license. So I had to go to the MVA a couple of weeks ago to update my driver's license. My license doesn't expire for a few more years, but Maryland is implementing the Real ID Act, which requires additional proofs of identity and residence and legal status so that when you present your driver's license as proof of identity, the person you're presenting it to, a cop who clocked you doing 5 miles over the posted speed limit and pulled you over because he was having a slow day, a post office employee to whom you've just applied for a passport, your new girlfriend's father, who has just accused you of being an identity thief, can be assured that you truly are who the license says you are. The MVA started sending me notifications in the mail back in the summer, telling me I had until December to update my documentation and get my real ID. The letters they would send me all urged me to call or go online to make an appointment to come in and present my documents. I never did, so toward the end of November, I got a letter from the MVA informing me that they had gone ahead and made an appointment for me, which was great, because that way I didn't have to bother making the appointment. All I had to do was show up when they told me to show up, which really took the pressure off of me. So I showed up at the MVA at the appointed date and time. I had a copy of my birth certificate. I had my social security card, I had my pieces of official mail with my address on them to establish that I really do live where I say I live. I did everything I was supposed to do, and I walked into the MVA, and everything went fine. I waited in line for a minute, a lady checked over my documents, she gave me a number and told me to go wait, and someone else would call my number in a few minutes. They actually called my number before I even had a chance to sit down. I walked up to the window where my number had been called. Another lady took my documents and scanned them and typed some into her computer. Then she gave me back my documents, gave me a receipt, thanked me, and told me I could go. It was all over in less than 5 minutes. And as I was in the parking lot, walking back to my truck, I got to thinking, I've never had a bad experience at the MVA. Not one. Every time I've gone there, the people have been polite and helpful. I even had to go there once to get a cop to inspect my taillight after another cop had written me a citation because it had gone out. It was just a burned out bulb, so I replaced the bulb, fixed the taillight, and then drove to the MVA. There's a little office down a hallway where there's always a state trooper, and I showed him my citation, and he walked outside with me, checked my taillight, signed off that it was fixed, and I was on my way. He was so courteous, he didn't make me wait 10 minutes just to prove he was in charge. He behaved like a public servant interacting with a member of the public. I'm sure he couldn't have been thrilled to be pulling MVA duty that day. I imagine he would have rather been out on the street accosting people of color over minor traffic violations. But it was one of the most pleasant encounters with a cop I've ever had. The only negative experience at the MVA I've ever had was when I was 16 and I took my driving test for the first time and I failed the test. But that wasn't the fault of anyone who worked at the MVA. I did a rolling stop during the road test. It was my fault. Now, I'm not trying to generalize based on my own experience because that can be dangerous. Just because I have had a particular experience or a series of similar experiences, that doesn't mean those experiences are the norm. But by the same token, I can't be that much of an exception either, can I? Are positive, or at the very least not negative experiences at the MVA/DMV/whatever really so rare? And if not negative experiences at the MVA, DMV, whatever aren't rare, how did that particular agency acquire its reputation for terrible customer service? You know what I think? I think we're the problem. I think it's our fault the MVA has such a shitty reputation. I'm not saying there's no such thing as a rude DMV employee. If you have a story about a terrible time at the DMV that was the fault of the people who work there, I believe you, okay? But I am saying that the rude, unhelpful employee is probably not a fair representative of the DMV or of similar government agencies. I think often our bad experiences at places like the DMV are caused by our own impatience and selfishness. Because look at the things people tend to complain about. Long lines, having to wait for an extended period of time before you get to talk to someone. That's not the fault of the person on the other side of the counter from you. If a bunch of other people got there first and you have to wait, then you just have to wait. Nobody did anything wrong. The people in line ahead of you didn't show up early to beat you there. The DMV employees helping the other people in line aren't dragging their feet intentionally just to screw you over. What else do people complain about? The rudeness, the lack of courtesy from DMV employees. And like I said, do legitimately rude DMV employees exist? I'm sure they do. I've never met one, but I'm sure they're out there. And yet I'd be willing to bet that more often than not, what we take to be rudeness is just a DMV employee trying to deal with you in the most efficient manner possible, so you can take care of your business and get out of the way to make room for the person in line behind you, who might be just as pissy about having to wait as you were before your number was called. I heard someone say one time, complaining about having to go to the DMV for something, "You're nothing but a number to those people." Yeah, that's right. You're one of many people, dozens, perhaps hundreds of people with similar problems that they'll have to deal with over the course of that day. So, within the context of this interaction, you sitting across the counter from them at the DMV, yes, you're a number to them. What do you expect? That they're going to ask you what you did for Christmas? Compliment you on your stylish yet understated choice of frames for your eyeglasses? Ask to see pictures of your fucking grandkids? Do you have any idea how much longer the wait would be if they did that to everyone who came up to the window? You're a whiny asshole over having to wait already. Is that what you really want? Some of you might be saying, "Sure, Steve, you've had good experiences at the DMV, but the population of your entire county is like 20 people. I live in, San Francisco or somewhere. There's a lot more people here, and I'd rather decapitate myself with my car's license plate than go to the DMV." Fair enough, and good luck with that. But let me ask you this. Why is it so much worse going to the DMV in a large city than a small one? What's the difference? More people? I still don't see how that's the fault of the people working at the DMV. If the problem is just that you don't like to wait, see my previous statement about what impatient shit-asses we all are. And if the problem is that the wait times are legitimately unreasonable, the DMV employees aren't to blame for that, because it's not their fault if there aren't enough people working there to handle the number of customers. And by the way, the fact that the DMV is usually the government agency being complained about is itself a marker of how privileged those of us who are driving this conversation are. Because there are other agencies, the Social Security Administration, the Health Department, the Department of Social Services, the Employment Office, etc., which offer services that are even more important and urgently needed by many people than our driver's licenses or vehicle registrations, and which are just as understaffed and underfunded as the DMV, if not more so. How did frontline government employees get to be the scapegoats for all our petty entitled bullshit? They don't make policy. They don't set their own funding. They're sometimes insufficiently trained through no fault of their own. They're often overworked and underpaid, especially in areas with large populations where the offices of places like the DMV or the Social Security Administration are packed with people in need of their services on a daily basis, and yet when we go there and have a bad time, we blame them instead of the politicians who cut their funding or made the arcane rules by which they have to abide. For my whole life, I'll be 40 this year, I've heard politicians, mostly Republicans, disparaging the government, blaming the government for all our problems, talking about government employees as though they're leeches stealing our tax dollars. Now think about that. Politicians, state and federal legislators, governors, presidents, etc., who are actually responsible for government dysfunction, have gotten us to direct our anger and annoyance over that dysfunction away from them and toward government employees who are not responsible for it. That is diabolical. I'd say it's brilliant, but it only works because we're such gullible, easily led rubes. So how brilliant is it really? If you get a fish to bite a hook with a worm on it, does that mean you're a genius? Or is the fish just not very bright? Now, like I said, it's mostly Republicans who have made complaining about the government a focal point of their rhetoric and gutting government services a cornerstone of their policies for generations. That's not to say there haven't been shitty Democrats who have done the same thing, but in general, vilifying and hobbling the government is a Republican trait. That being the case, here's what I propose. If you vote Republican, the next time you have a negative experience at the DMV or some other government agency, instead of complaining about it, try one of these two alternatives. One, stop voting for Republicans who slash funding for government services, thereby creating the circumstances that probably caused your negative experience in the first place. Or, if you intend to continue voting for Republicans, take option two, shut the fuck up. Because most of the problems people complain about regarding the DMV and other government agencies are the result of that office not having the resources it needs to meet the demand for its services. And that's not the fault of the people who work there. It's the fault of the state or federal legislators and executives who have failed to provide those necessary resources. And if you voted for those legislators and executives and support the political party to which they belong, ultimately, it's your fault too. But what do a few underfunded government agencies really matter as long as billionaires get to pay a lower tax rate, right? In fact, the next time you're stuck at the DMV, steeping in your own impotent rage as you wait for them to call your number, just think of all the unfathomably wealthy people in our country who are benefiting thanks in part to your sacrifice. Granted, to them, the benefit is minuscule because they would never even have missed the money needed to pay the higher taxes, which might have enabled your DMV office to hire more employees or provide better training. But hey, as you're sitting there on that metal bench, peevishly glancing back and forth between your ticket and the monitor that displays the number currently being served, at least you'll know.